Hello everybody and welcome to the channel. Now for today I have a first trimester recap video for you guys. Now for those who don't know, I very recently made it out of the first trimester of pregnancy and I'm now into the second trimester of pregnancy, and I thought that this little recap video would actually be a pretty good video to do, mainly just so that maybe people can watch this who are pregnant themselves and can maybe relate to the symptoms, the things that we've been experiencing. But obviously please bear in mind that each pregnancy and all symptoms are very different, but this is my personal experience that I'm going to share with you guys today, so just bear that in mind. I'm going to talk in this video about all of my symptoms that I had in the first trimester. I've made a little note. There are quite a few symptoms down here. I kind of did try to sit down and think about when these symptoms started and kind of when they came to an end, or if they're still ongoing now. The very first symptom that I actually got when it came to pregnancy was extreme tiredness. Now, because of certain health problems that I already suffer from, that can make me very tired. That can make my sleep a little bit disturbed anyways. So when these symptoms first started happening, the extreme tiredness and the lack of energy, I at first didn't completely think about a pregnancy. Obviously I knew that there was a possibility that I could be pregnant, but just solely on the fact that I was feeling just extremely tired, I just thought maybe I'm coming down with a cold, or maybe it's just my other health problems acting up. I was extremely tired. I had absolutely no energy whatsoever. I often had to sleep during the day. I used to have little naps. Sometimes I still do if I'm completely exhausted. Sometimes even just to cook a meal, it was quite difficult for me. And then after the extreme tiredness came the sick, sensitive stomach and the constipation, and these were more the symptoms that made me think possibly of, more of a pregnancy. The constipation, I mean, it's my bowel movements. I don't feel like I want to get into too much detail about my bowel movements, but it's important to mention because it is a first trimester symptom, and it can be quite an early symptom of pregnancy as well. With me, constipation was actually the first symptom that I received of pregnancy that really made me think, like, this is really not normal for me at all. And I would say that this symptom started perhaps around week 4 or 5, so quite early on in the pregnancy really. And the tiredness, I would say, started a couple of weeks prior to that. So we're talking really early days of just these little tiny hints of a pregnancy, The sickness started about the same time the constipation did, and that was about week maybe 5. And I wasn't actually physically sick very often. Throughout the whole of the first trimester, I was physically sick about 5 or 6 times out of the whole first trimester. So compared to what some women go through whilst they're pregnant, I feel like I got off quite lightly. However, I constantly all day felt very sick. I did go through a phase of perhaps around week 9 or 10 where I was sick almost every morning, but that kind of quickly came and went. I just felt very sick all the time. It was difficult for me to eat, although I did still eat relatively well during the first trimester. I'm actually worse now with my appetite going into the second trimester, which is a bit back to front. And although my sickness hasn't been as bad going into the second trimester, my appetite has just taken a bit of a knock recently. I figured out that really I shouldn't be making any sudden movements. Most of the time I just figured that I need to make careful and slow movements. So especially things like, going from standing to sitting or sitting to standing. Things like getting out of bed, I kind of have to, instead of twisting my body around like I would normally to maybe reach for something, I'll have to shift my whole body around to get it, if that makes any sense. And I found that helped ease the sickness a little bit, and also the cramping that I've been getting as well. but we'll talk more on the cramping later. My sickness kind of started to subside, I would say, around week 10, 11. However, again, I'm still dealing with the loss of appetite. Moving on to another symptom that kind of links in with constipation, and that is bloating. That's another very common pregnancy symptom that I actually got quite early on. Again, probably around weeks 5, 6, around then, that I really started to notice this kind of heavy bloating going on. And obviously partially that is due to like your body's like, whoa, going through lots of changes. But also obviously it's partially due to the constipation and just the weird bowel movements that your body's going through right now. It's a strange time for your stomach. That's not too bad at the moment, so I'm hoping that will just continue to subside moving further on into the second trimester. The bloating was very, very uncomfortable at times on a night trying to sleep, even though I didn't eat close to my bedtimes. It was just very uncomfortable. A lot of pregnant women tend to get very strange taste in their mouth, and some women kind of tend to describe this as very metallic. Me, on the other hand, I'm not too sure how to describe it, but there was definitely this weird taste in my mouth, and I couldn't explain, and I still can't explain what kind of taste it is and what kind of feeling it is, but it just is gross. It was just making my stomach feel even more sick and even more like, ugh. I had that weird taste in my mouth for pretty much the whole of the first trimester, minus the first maybe 3 or 4 weeks. So I had that for like, 2 months, just constantly, and it was driving me absolutely insane. Something else that some women complain about is changes in their moods. My moods, considering I myself, suffer from poor mental health, my moods were surprisingly not too bad until week maybe 11 or 12, and that's when they really started to mess with me a little bit. I was definitely more emotional. I woke up one morning, it was a Monday morning, and I just wanted to sit down and cry. And I did, for no reason really. I couldn't quite pinpoint why, but I just needed to sit down and cry. I'm like trying to explain to my partner, like, I am so sorry. This is the pregnancy doing things to me right now. Since that kind of peak, it seems to have died down a little bit again. Yeah, it's been very, very hectic, and I'm surprised my moods held out okay that long, to be honest. My sleep was disturbed. It has been disturbed, and my sleep still is being disturbed. I just tend to have very bitty sleeps. I may sleep for an hour or two, then wake up, and then an hour will go by and I'm still awake, and I've been struggling to get back to sleep more, things like that. Just can't get comfortable in bed anymore. I'll roll around and move a lot more in bed than what I ever have done before, kind of thing. Moving on to the symptom that mainly really started to kick up in about weeks 6 and 7, and that is darkened nipples. Again, this is a very common pregnancy symptom that so many people report, so many people talk about it. And the thing is, you guys, I have just personally been pretty amazed at just how much my breasts have changed with pregnancy. They have already grown. Like I said, the nipples are darker, the area around the nipples are, I'm sorry, you can't see, but I'm like like doing all this with my breasts. I'm like, these are my nipples, and it's weird. Like I say, for me that started around week 6 and 7, and it has continued up until this day as well. I'm ticking off the symptoms as I talk about them, by the way, so that's why I keep looking down. What else do we have on this list? Backache and hip ache, massively. That's been a problem since, again, about week 6, and I have back problems anyway, you guys know that already. But hip pain, like seriously, I've been in so much pain with my back and my hips going down around my bum and then just down my legs. It's not been very comfortable for me really, and those are aches and pains that I am still currently getting. I don't think that the hip pain and the back pain are going to subside, mainly just because my body's only going to continue to change as the pregnancy develops and as the baby grows. I've been getting stomach cramps as well. They kind of feel like period pains, and I've had it on both sides of my lower stomach. I think this is partially down to obviously all the changes going on. My uterus is expanding, body's changing, and so yeah, the stretch marks because of the bloating and the fact that I am currently just starting to show in the pregnancy. Stretch marks have gotten worse on my stomach. I did have a few stretch marks on my tummy anyway, but since being pregnant they have gotten worse, and they have got worse for me quite early on in the pregnancy as well. Especially later on in the first trimester, I was starting to get a little bit dizzy and a little bit lightheaded at times. So that's another reason why I've been more slow in my movements, standing to sitting, sitting to standing, getting out of bed on a morning, just in general, just moving slower. It helped my sickness, but it also obviously helped my dizziness and lightheadedness. The dizziness and the lightheadedness is something that I'm still battling with a little bit, but I'm hoping over time it'll just settle down. The final symptom is more headaches, but this has mainly been happening at the back end of the first trimester, perhaps the last month or so of the first trimester, particularly in the last 2 weeks I've noticed. But that's all of the symptoms that I could personally think of. Overall, the first trimester was difficult. Not very nice. So thank you so much for watching. What pregnancy symptoms did you have, or have you got right now? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you're new here, go ahead and click on that subscribe button. Thank you so much once again for watching, and I very much hope to see you in my next video.